So if you can turn a paragraph into a series of bullet points simply by just hitting the enter key and just putting them on the next level, that's not flow. There's going to be some interesting stuff here. For me mostly, but for everyone else, we can just sort of, you're welcome to come along for the ride. You can't go wrong with this stuff. Moving from one section to the next. So if you really want to jazz up your work. So this is little things you can drop in, moving from one section to the next while indicating addition, contrast, or opposition. Well, it's a bigger example of what I've been talking about. So there's the language of argumentation slide we see here. Just be conscious of those words, those little terms. I mean, it's not my famous term. It's not rocket science, but it isn't rocket science. It's fairly simple and it is artificial. Academic writing is artificial. So the next video I have for everyone is on flow. And flow is a term used in relation to academic writing. Now, what is flow? I often use the term connective tissue a lot when I'm talking to students or I'm talking to my own clients, and I basically tell them that flow or connective tissue is what makes the sentences look less sentencey or look less like staccato sentences. So if you can turn a paragraph into a series of bullet points simply by just hitting the enter key and just putting them on the next level, that's not flow. So there's no flow. But if you've words like therefore or as such or as we have seen, just very simple little connective tissue words, then that's flow. There's going to be some interesting stuff here. For me mostly, but for everyone else, we can just sort of, you're welcome to come along for the ride. Flow. So look, here we go. Here's our first slide. And it is a lovely slide. So plan ahead, know your purpose, and convey your ideas in a unified manner. So just make everything clear. Coherency. So when your supervisor says, you know what, you should make that bit more coherent, what they're actually talking about is organizing your thoughts in a logical, structured progression. You also hear the word concise. This is the sentences are not concise, or God forbid your whole thesis is not concise. So what are they talking about? So what they're basically talking about there is budget your words wisely. Ensure your writing contains only what's necessary. So that kind of covers you for anything to do with sort of padding or waffling or meandering. Now, most people just finish on the first draft. They just say, you know what, I'm personally done, but I will come back as to why you should do a second or third draft on it. Now, the next one is concrete, okay? So that just means use specific and precise language. Use measurable descriptions and avoid vague language. I'd also add to that, avoid flowery language. Now, as everyone has seen from my very lovely video on academic writing and critical engagement, I have a particular hatred of flowery language. Just keep everything simple, like concrete, like the very nature of the word concrete, like something solid, something very plain, and something very unattractive, just like a slab of concrete. But it's doing the heavy lifting, like it's doing a lot of work. The next one is complete. So give all the important information and answer all the relevant questions. That sort of jumps back to what we're talking about regarding vague language or meandering. So just keep everything in a sequential line of thought. And the last one is courteous. So format so the document is easy to read, use appropriate and tactful language. Now in the video on formatting, I'm going to cover that for you. And the crux of it is basically like, your examiner is going to look much more favorably on you if your document is nice, if it looks nice, if it reads nice. So it's very important just to keep everything civil. Don't upset the examiner, don't upset the reader, just keep everything simple and civil. Now, another important term I am famous for using is signposting. Because academic writing is often long and long-winded, and the arguments sometimes they take a good run to get them going. So there's usually an argument might be spread over like 2 or 3 paragraphs. It's a good idea to give some signposting. So let people know, like really just hit us over the head with and say, okay, look, I'm doing this because, or here's an interesting fact, and here's another interesting fact. And here's why I'm giving you those interesting facts. Because lo and behold, these two interesting facts, well, look, they're going to answer one of my objectives. And that objective is going to ultimately answer my research question. So signposting is about hand-holding. So you're basically saying to someone, here's my thesis, okay? I'm very intelligent, I'm very knowledgeable. I have all this stuff I put into my thesis. Look at my literature review. But you can really show your intelligence by explaining what you're doing. Because if you're explaining to me, okay, look, the next section is going to be this, then we're going to just hang on a sec, because we're going to, once I start talking about this and once I finish talking about that, we're going to move on to the next section. I'm going to do the old tried and trusted part of any video, which is to read something off the screen while things happen around me. Flow and connectivity allow the reader to follow the thread of the argument from one sentence to the next and from one paragraph to the next. My favorite term is, signposting. Other people use the term screws. They're basically doing the same thing. They're basically keeping things together and guiding someone through it. So what are these so-called screws? So the next series of lovely slides I have here is just going to detail using examples, because it's all well and good for me to start, I was going to say effing and blinding, but faffing and blaffing about flow and about signposting and screws and all that sort of stuff. It's best just to give you examples. So if you use these examples, or even some of them in your thesis, even artificially use them, because you will, as I said, go back to the idea of the drafts. Your first draft is going to look like a mess. Do not submit the mess. Just really take another run at it and say, do you know what? Bill's video really made me think. He showed me some stuff on screws and signposting, and I'm going to try and use some of that stuff. And well, look, you can't go wrong with this stuff. Moving from one section to the next. So if you really want to jazz up your work, just add some of these in. These are really good. Before proceeding to examine X, it'll be necessary to. Now, X is whatever your thesis is about. So let's say it's about, before proceeding to examine the change in curriculum at post-primary level in Ireland, it will be necessary to blah, 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 whatever it is. Before employing these theories to examine X, it is necessary to. Turning now to the experimental evidence on. So far, this paper and chapter has focused on X. That's a favorite one of mine. You're basically saying, okay, look, we've walked a bit of a distance into the thesis. We've looked at a few different paragraphs. We have a few arguments here. Let me just summarize what's going on so far. Let me just tell you where we've been. Now, don't stray too far into repetition or summarizing something that came just beforehand. You want to just give enough to show that you're aware of where you're going. So think of arguments as like a big long thread, and if you keep walking, how do you know that thread is still attached? So it's good every once in a while to go, do you know what, the thread is still here, and you're going to pull it a little bit, and you're going to go, yeah, it still looks okay, those arguments are still sound, but just mention them. Go, the reason I'm doing this, so far this paper / chapter has focused on X. Now I'm going to look at something different. So that's a very important one. And the next one as well is kind of similar. Having defined what is meant by X, I will now move on to discuss Y. This chapter follows on from the previous chapter, which examined blah, blah, blah. So moving from one section to the next, now you don't have to do it for every single paragraph, but every once in a while, just drop one of these in there, and the examiner's kind of thinking, do you know what, I'm glad of that summary, because it shows to me that the student knows where they're going. And the most important thing in any thesis, whether it's qualitative, quantitative, or mixed, or any other type of thesis, just show that you know where you're situated in it. The author is often invisible in a thesis, but that doesn't mean that the author is mute. So every once in a while, the author should just say, let's just hold up here for just a few sentences while I just say what's happened and where I'm going to go next. Everyone's still awake? Good. Let's have a look at another one. So this is little things you can drop in, moving from one section to the next while indicating addition, contrast, or opposition. And on the left here, we have more examples of what I was harping on about in the last slide, but we also have another little thing here, a little example where you can see those particular things dropped in. So you help link the sentences, and as you say, it helps show contrast or opposition. This chapter has demonstrated that, so now it's necessary to explain this. Having discussed that, the final section will look at this. On the other hand, in spite of much new knowledge about the role of, let's look at the opposite of it. However, despite this. So however and despite this, they're great they're great terms you can use when you want to maintain that flow and you want to show that sort of element of that you're engaging with the text. So rather than just go, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then this happened, and the examiner's like, yeah, okay, you're just giving me bare facts. But where's the engagement? Where is the actual, where's the flow? Where's the connective tissue? Like even sticking in something like however, or despite this, you're showing to the examiner that you're aware that there was a sentence just before the full stop. And now the next sentence has to have some connection to it. And just popping in the word however connects those two sentences. Now don't be worrying that I've gone mad from showing too many slides. All these slides, like in any lecture theatre you've ever been in, you kind of look at them and go, okay, that's really interesting, and you're furiously writing them all down. But I'm gonna go a little bit further. I'm gonna show you some examples. So if you just hold on for the moment and just, I'm doing a bit of signpost in this video. So I'm gonna say to you, just relax, just listen to what I'm saying here, look at the examples. Later on, I'll show how you implement this in. So I'll write my own examples and I'll fix them up. I'll be doing live proofreading and editing and flow correction. That's going to be very exciting for someone out there. Just hang in, we'll get there eventually. Now I promised another slide, so buckle in. Well, it's a bigger example of what I've been talking about. So there's the language of argumentation slide which you see here. So certain phrases are often used in argumentation, and some examples are provided below which you can use to help write your argument. So pop these in every now and again, you'll be sorted. So words and phrases which can be used in argumentation, why he argues that, why he suggests this, why he contends that, so on and so forth. So that's the main thrust of flow and academic writing. Just be conscious of those words, those little terms. I mean, it's not my famous term. It's not rocket science, but it isn't rocket science. It's fairly simple and it is artificial. Academic writing is artificial. The finished product might look very fancy. It might look like, oh my God, this person really knows what they're talking about. There's great flair. There's great flow. And there's great engagement with the thing. But that doesn't happen at the beginning. Like that's for someone like me. Like a third or fourth draft before that happens, and you really have to know what flow is before you can add it to your text. So for me, saying to someone your academic writing is not up to par, well, what does that mean? I mean, you have to tell someone what academic writing is. You can't just say it's scholarly writing, because what is that? Because some scholarly writing is not scholarly. And some casual writing can be very scholarly. If you were to talk like an academic article, no one would listen. Not everyone would just like, what is this? This is just, I'm following something, but it sounds too fancy. And now I'm sort of listening to the fanciness of it rather than the content of it. Just remember, academic writing, completely artificial, something you do on the second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever draft. But it's not something you knock out of the park straight away, which is why I always tell people, do not submit your first draft. So until the next video, which will be on, I presume it's on referencing. There will be a schedule at some point when I regain consciousness from doing these videos. But I'm getting there. I'm getting much better. I'm getting more used to facing down the barrel of the gun / camera lens. This is a work in progress. I am a work in progress. I'm gonna make some mistakes. There's gonna be lights missing from the background. The background is probably going to not blur as much. Or for whatever reason, but I hope you'll stick with me, and I hope we'll grow together with these videos, and you'll keep me on your journey.